So in this week's episode, we're taking a closer look at Coadjute. And for those of you in the world of conveyancing, you may not have heard of these guys just yet. They're looking to revolutionize the way in which the different parties involved in a conveyancing transaction communicate with each other. Now, this is an integration that's in development as far as Osprey is concerned, and that's being done as we speak. We're expecting to be able to release it out to you in the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks. Now, I called it an integration, and if I'm honest, a little bit hesitant to do so. Everything else we've covered in our series so far is an integration. We have a channel between Osprey and these other providers where on your request, information is sent from Osprey to the integration provider. This then performs a requested action and then sends a bit of information back to Osprey to be stored. But with all of them, there's only one channel of communication to and from Osprey and this other provider. Coadjute, on the other hand, is more like a network. You can imagine maybe a neural network connecting your brain, the roads that connect every city, town, and village, the electrical grid that connects every power station and every home. Whatever form of network you're familiar with, it's absolutely fine. You can imagine it just like that. And this network allows for all of the parties in any given conveyancing transaction to be updated as and when required. Now, we've maybe seen or heard of attempts at applications, programs, or softwares that allow you to communicate with these different parties. But they've always had one very fundamental flaw, and that's a reliance on every party having the same software, which is essentially impossible. Estate agents don't need the same software that you do. Mortgage lenders, brokers, banks, all of these places need different software. And that ultimately led to everybody either needing to adopt to a new software or it failing. And if they do adopt a new software, that means they have to duplicate their workload. And for anyone who's been following the series, you'll know by now that duplicating work runs a higher risk of error and is obviously time consuming. Now, Coadjute is different because it just doesn't work in this way. It sits on the Osprey software. It sits on the estate agents, the brokers, the bank software. And by doing this, it eradicates the issues of any of these previous attempts, and it truly does connect the conveyancing world digitally. Now, we have Dan Salmons here with us today, who's the CEO at Coadjute, and he's going to introduce you to Coadjute, where they came from, why, and how it also works in detail. Hi, Dan. Hi, how are you doing?
Nice to see you, Matt. Hi.
Yeah, hi, good. Before we do sort of let you take over the screen here, what I want to do is just first for everybody here is we just take a look at what maybe your current processes for communicating with these other parties is. And very plain screen here because there aren't that many options really. And the way that you communicate with them won't really have changed very much anytime recently. And that's because up until now, it's always been the best process. Emails, maybe telephone calls and posts, they've been the most efficient methods of communication in a professional sense between professional parties for a while. Now, as I say, now that that's not really going to be the case anymore, let's take a look at why they're no longer the best process. Calling people, so telephone calls, that relies on people being available. Everyone involved in a conveyancing transaction is going to be extremely busy and will definitely appreciate that more so now than ever before. It's equally not an automated process. Mistakes happen. We're not just talking about you here. All parties involved need to be flawless to progress the transaction as quickly as possible. And it's likely that some calls don't get made when they should do during the process, or notes don't get stored correctly, and that all just leads to delays. It's also the case that telephone calls aren't appropriate in certain situations, and in many situations they're not. And you'll need to look to one of the other two methods to communicate with these parties. And that brings us on to the next one is emails. And they're maybe the more efficient communication option out of the three on screen, and that's because it's the newer technology out of the three. Now, it is also now probably the most common communication method in the world. We've got around 320 billion emails sent every single day. And with that, lots of that is spam, which means that you increasingly buff up your filters and make them more secure. And that means that, again, emails can find themselves in the wrong folders and being missed out. With emails as well, solicitors are also one of the top targets for phishing scams. Obviously, that's just due to the amount of money involved in your transactions, which does kind of make it a potentially dangerous channel to be using. You probably have a bit in your signature that says you'll never update your bank details via email. And that's only there because of phishing scams. Post and post, the less said about post, the better. It's almost always the most inefficient option for communication. The time spent printing, prepping, sending, the costs associated with those, and the delays and waiting for delivery, the post sitting on top of the in trays, just causes undue interruptions to sending and receiving information. There are times where posts may be required, but those are really few and far between. And what we're talking about is effectively communicating data and documents, and that definitely doesn't have any requirement to be done via post. So now we have an understanding as to what's problematic with maybe some of the current methods that we're using. Let's learn about Coadjute. So Dan, again, thank you so much for coming here today and kindly taking time out of a very busy schedule. I know you've prepared a presentation for our Osprey customers. So if you want to share your screen, and let's just introduce us all to Coadjute.
Thank you very much, Matt. Let me just bring that up on screen. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. And good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending when you're watching the webinar. Really nice to be able to talk to all of you. Thanks for taking time out of your very busy schedules. I'm delighted to be able to share Coadjute with you. I'm the Chief Executive of Coadjute. I have a background innovating over 20, 30 years, actually, mostly in and around financial services. I'm probably best known for leading the rollout of contactless in the UK, which was a journey we began back in 2007, when at the time it was considered crazy to say that money, cash, could ever be replaced with something electronic. But I've also led initiatives in mobile payments, in parking payments, in mortgages, and all sorts of other areas. And I was working as a director at one of the big banks a few years ago, and we'd done quite a lot of work to digitize the mortgage itself. And that reduced the time it took to get a mortgage from a couple of weeks to perhaps 8 to 10 days. But of course, the rest of the journey is another 4 or 5 months. And so I was looking for ways to solve that. And Coadjute is one of the neatest ways that I can see or imagine for how you could do that. It's part of a huge trend actually happening around the world to introduce new types of networks based around a technology called blockchain that you may have heard of in the past, often associated with things like cryptocurrency. And this is a quite different application of the same underlying technology. What it does, though, is bring bank-grade enterprise technology into the property market in a way that has never happened before. And I think what this will create is a national grid for the property market, which I think is a tremendously exciting opportunity and will change how we all communicate. So delighted to be talking to you as Osprey users to explain how Osprey, one of the first platforms that will be introducing Coadjute, makes that available to you. So first, let's just touch on why is the property market so in need of this? And you'll live this every day, I should think, of your working life, but it is unusual as an industry. It does have these very different professions operating within it, all of which effectively work to some extent in their own silos. You know, each profession has its own software, has its own websites that it reads, has its own qualifications and so on. And whilst other industries like banking also involve multiple different professions, traditionally they are connected by universal digital networks. In banking, we take it for granted that one bank can send another one a payment over a standard network. When you shop with a credit card, you take for granted that the world's shops and banks are joined by networks like Visa and MasterCard. That doesn't exist in property. And so the challenge of this lack of digital connectivity is one that is creating work actually for everybody involved in property. You know, for you as conveyancers, that involves, you know, rekeying data, checking for consistency, you know, aligning different records, obviously chasing for updates, but also being chased for updates, you know, switching between platforms, as Matt touched on, and phishing and fraud. And of course, a big challenge, I think, for all of us is constant new technology coming through that you then have to think about how you're going to adopt, if you're going to adopt, and when you're going to adopt. There's no kind of future proofing because there's no rails at the moment on which the industry can run. So it throws up a huge amount of challenges that there isn't this connectivity in our industry. So what if every party involved in a property transaction was securely connected to each other, that you could see and see the same information as someone else could see at the same time, in real time, real sharing, and that when a new digital development came along, such as, for example, digital identity, you didn't need to learn or use a new system. It was just naturally plugged in to the same national grid that you're using. And what if, even better, that could be done from within Osprey, a development to Osprey itself, and not constantly adding additional systems. And that's what Coadjute's going to start to bring. People are beginning to learn about Coadjute now, but we've been around for some time, actually. We actually grew out of a pilot project that took place at the Land Registry in 2018. The original Coadjute team demonstrated to the Land Registry how titles could be put on a blockchain. And following that very well-reported pilot, they then ran a series of other pilots involving major banks and other players, firstly around the world and then focusing on the UK. And in the UK, what we discovered was that the way to connect the property market was absolutely through the software they already use. We've spent the last year now building the industrial network, the system that we now have live, and we've been connecting many of the players in the property market, including some of the names on this list here. So how does Coadjute actually work? What Coadjute does is it connects the property market through the existing platforms peer-to-peer. And the peer-to-peer point is actually really important. There is no central Coadjute database. The modern way of dealing with data is not to pool it all into the center, but to keep it where it sits so that there isn't the additional data risk of sharing the data with another party other than the one that you want to share it with. Those connections are done using bank-grade enterprise blockchain technology. It's the same kind of technology that is linking, for example, all the banks of Italy for settlement, or the world's trade finance systems are linked using this kind of technology. It's designed actually to carry money. We're carrying data with the same level of security. It's incredibly reliable and resilient. The great thing about a distributed network is even if one part of it were to go down, the rest is completely resilient. There is no risk of a central database in this kind of technology. It's also incredibly secure because things are encrypted where they sit, they're encrypted when they travel. So that's a new way of connecting all the parties up. What does it look like in practice? Well, here's an example of what the network permits. On the left-hand side here, we've got the estate agent CRM, in this case, a system called Reapit. And what you can see is inside their system, what they're looking at is a list of tasks here that they're ticking off. What happens over, meanwhile, in Osprey, and this is a mocked up Osprey screen. This won't be the final one. We're busy designing with Osprey at the moment, what that will look like. But what you can see is it shows exactly the same thing. That's because the data is synchronized. These two systems historically will have had their own records held completely separately, which gives the risk that they're holding different information and either have to contact each other to get the same information or they have to accept that their information isn't aligned. This allows them, when they choose to connect in a highly secure way and share information just on this deal. It's a really important part of Coadjute that information is only shared by the parties involved in a particular property deal. No one else can see that information. So we call it, what you see is what I see, real-time live insight into what's going on in the other parties. What sort of functionality does that give you? Well, those connections to the other parties involved in a property deal give you the chance to have real-time progress updates, referrals, because estate agents can send, if you like, a request to invite you to join them in a deal. Instant messaging, which is proving a really popular facility, because unlike email, which it then has to be associated back with a matter, with instant messaging, it's actually inside your own system, connecting to the other parties involved in a deal and keeping a record of the conversation on that deal. And then for the future, we're going to be introducing a whole raft of additional functionality. Along will be coming document sharing, digital identity is something we're looking at, further property data to augment the property information, and connectivity to the land registry will be in there as well. And many more, in fact, even including eventually, we think we'll be sharing digital titles and digital settlement over Coadjute. It will become the network for the industry. It's not our job, if you like, to provide many of the features that will sit on Coadjute. That will be provided, for example, in the case of digital identity, by identity providers joining the network and offering their services over the network. And that's how we future-proof everyone against new technologies coming through, that they will join the network and therefore be available to users of Coadjute, such as the Osprey system. So what next? Where are we here? Well, Coadjute, as Matt mentioned, is going to be available in Osprey from August. I think it's a hugely exciting development. Osprey will become a connected system at that point. People across the industry are connecting. We're fielding a huge number of inquiries at the moment as people begin to make use of it and connect up to the parties they deal with most. We will be sharing lots of more webinars and materials in terms of how exactly you get to download it, how you get to use it, how you get to benefit from it. And really the overall message is just get ready to be connected along with the rest of the industry. This is now a super exciting moment where the property market begins to have access for the first time to bank grade connectivity between all the parties involved. So it'll be the beginning of the rollout. You will be amongst the first to really make use of this exciting technology and get some of the benefits of it as well. So thank you enormously for your time. I'm really happy to take questions. And then, of course, we'll look forward to sharing more in a few weeks when we're live inside Osprey. Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I mean, it really sounds like it really is just the next logical step for conveyancing, a real evolutionary step. Obviously, we're really excited to be able to sort of introduce to you all today this, and we're really excited for the release as well. Of course, as Dan said, we'll keep you up to date with its progress and ensure we have another webinar or something down the line. But as you say, you know, using this is really a way to sort of keep ahead of the curve as well. You join in on a project like Coadjute, it means that you're going to be there on the front line of change. You're going to help push boundaries of what's possible in the sector. And, you know, firms like you, if you're adopting this early, as you say, you're the ones who gain the advantage by doing that. You're reducing sort of instruction to completion times, reduce your costs, you simplify the process. And that's just going to lead to happy customers, better reputations, and more instructions. So before we move on to the Q&A, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone watching this here live and on demand as well. And anyone who's watched or engaged with the series as a whole, big thank you to you all. Again, also as well, Dan, a big thank you to you for taking your time out and coming here to speak to us all. Just to let everyone know, final thing, promise, before I move on to the Q&A, is that we are still running our Focus Workflow series. It's got a few more weeks to go. This week, Alex is going to be covering the employment workflow. That's going to include functionality for tribunals, disciplinary proceedings, settlements, and grievances. If you and your firm also do employment work and you're not using workflows, then please just sign up to that one and give it a watch. That one kicks off at 10 a.m. on Thursday. So Q&A, and we do have a few questions here, Dan. So first one, great question actually. What does Coadjute mean? And are we saying it correctly, I guess, as well at that point?
Now, everyone seems to say it slightly differently. Firstly, it's a real word. I should say that's a real English word. It's fallen out of use, I think, over the years. Yeah. It's time to bring it back. Yeah, Coadjute means to cooperate, to collaborate, to work together. So yeah, perfect name for what we're doing. Sometimes people say, oh, is this disruptive technology? And I go, absolutely not. The last thing we want is to disrupt the industry. We're here to connect it, to bring it together, to enable it to cooperate. So yeah, that's exactly what Coadjute means. We tend to say Coadjute over here in the UK. The Americans tend to say Coadjute with
Coadjute, yeah.
But I believe it's fully acceptable.
Yeah. Okay. And the next question that we've had is how much does it cost?
So that'll be something that actually will be confirmed by Osprey, by yourselves,
yep.
Over the coming weeks, actually, as we complete the development. It's worth saying, you know, one of the things I love about Coadjute is it is embedded in your existing software. It's very unusual that you can take advantage of a new technology with such a low barrier. It's incredibly easy to use. It's one of the first things people say is, oh my goodness, I really didn't need any training. I pretty much switched it on. It's absolutely obvious what you're supposed to do. But that embedding also means that you're effectively buying it through Osprey. So yeah, the prices will be confirmed shortly. But we've worked really hard to keep the cost absolutely rock bottom so that as many people as possible can benefit from it.
And that will answer the next question as well, which is, does it take a lot of work to install it? Obviously, we take that onus on, we do the development work, and we make it as simple as possible for you. I could take over that one. Another question we've had then is about security of data. Obviously, you've talked about blockchain technology and all of that, and I assume that probably answers the question majoritively, but is there anything you wanted to add to that of how it is that you keep the data secure?
Yeah, there's a couple of lines of security. So first, it's worth saying, yeah, this is bank grade blockchain that we're using here. We're literally treating your data like money. You know, there are not many systems out there that are so secure you can run money over them. You can on Coadjute, actually. We're not using it for that. We're using it for data in the first instance, but the data, yeah, highly encrypted within the blockchain itself. It's encrypted where it stands. It encrypts when it flows. The API connectivity that we have within Osprey, that adds another layer of security, because you can only get into these records as an Osprey user. You've already logged into Osprey. So you've got that line of security before you even get to Coadjute. And then there's further security coming in. So yeah, that's been a huge focus. And actually, if you look at what it compares with, the alternative, as you touched on at the beginning, Matt, is you download a document into email, where you then send it over email with all the risks that we know that. And then at the other end, they upload it into their system, again, adding another risk that maybe they associate it with the wrong record. So yeah, no, it's a huge, what this does is it connects one system to another directly by a secure connection, so that a matter comes out of one system, goes into the other, never touching the sides. Yeah, incredibly secure.
Exactly. So the next question is who do I talk to for a demo, and can I sign up now?
Yeah, you can. Please register your names now. We've got lots of folks actually already saying yes, please, when it's available. I'd like to be onboarded. But yeah, absolutely, contact your usual Osprey reps. And then in terms of more information, yeah, we will, as we mentioned, we'll be doing some more webinars and stuff. And nearer the time, we'll be able to show you the actual final Osprey version when it's all set. So yeah, that will be coming in the next few weeks. Yeah, contact Osprey, but by all means, yes, please register your interest, and then we'll make sure that you're ahead of what is becoming quite a big list at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure it's really busy at the moment, getting through all of that.
It's been crazy. I know COVID's been a terrible thing, but my goodness, it's made life busy for those of us digitizing.
Definitely. Just to touch on sort of demos and training as well. Obviously, once we've got it released, we'll also arrange our usual training sessions that we can have. So if anybody wants to sort of book in your entire firm to see it, just so that you can know what you're doing with it, as Dan said, you know, it's going to be intuitive. It's going to be really easy to use, but we will still have our normal training sessions available for them. And obviously those are at no cost or anything. There's another question that we've had. You've actually kind of touched on this one as well in answering another question is can Coadjute move money as well as data?
Yeah, it can, and actually it's something that we will look at in the future. We think there's lots of opportunities, but we will be led by the community. Actually, one of the things about Coadjute is, as a network, we will be bringing together groups of the users and also of the software platforms like Osprey that use it to talk about what's the most urgent developments, what do people most want to use the network for, and we'll be strongly influenced by that. So our aim is to help the property market, you know, tackle its most urgent problems first. So yeah, but absolutely, it's something that we're looking at. And working with the land registry on. So yeah, very, very excited to do that in the future, but prioritization will depend on what people most want to see on the network.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So that is actually all of the questions that we've had through for today. If anybody, if you're watching on demand, or if you're thinking of questions later down the line, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. If we need to get in touch with Dan to ask those questions, if we're not 100% sure, then we've got his contact information, and we will do that, and he will get back to us, and we will make sure that you obviously get all of the answers that you need. Just get in touch on the normal support lines. And that's it. So yeah, thank you absolutely to everybody again for watching and interacting with us, and Dan, again, thank you for joining us today.
No, you're more than welcome, Matt, and thanks everybody for viewing.
Thanks, Dan.